Hi, I'm Claire Tompkins, the Clutter Coach, and this is the Organize Your Life podcast. I am passionate about organizing because it makes my clients' lives so much easier, more relaxed, and with more time to spend the way that they want to. In every podcast, I will talk about an organizing, decluttering, or time management concept. I'll tell you why it's important. I'll also include an action step at the end so you can start practicing right away. My specialty is chunking down these big topics so they aren't overwhelming. That's the concept for the podcast, too. I'm now done with the material from my first book, 52 Simple Ways to Get Organized. You can buy my books on my website or on Amazon. You can also view the podcast show notes on my blog. I do this podcast to connect with people, and that means you. Let me know that you're listening. Shoot me an email at claire@cluttercoach.net. I would really love to hear from you. Okay, here we go. This is podcast 99, and it's about a productivity tool I call the virtual team. You assemble a virtual team with people in your life to help you be accountable. I came up with this idea for one of my clients who's a consultant. He works for a company, but he doesn't have an office there. His job involves working with people from different departments on different projects. So for the most part, he is running the show. Sometimes his projects aren't moving along as fast as they could, though. In a typical work setting, he'd be meeting regularly with colleagues and sending reports to his boss. There'd be a structure and a timeline for each project that was the responsibility of more than one person, and each person had a specific role to play. When you're independent or work for yourself, you don't have that structure. A lot of my podcasts have been about ways you can motivate yourself and sustain that when you have only yourself to answer to. Because that's me. I don't have a boss, or I'm the boss and the employee. I can take initiative and get things done most of the time, but I also benefit from my virtual team. So, what is a virtual team? It's a collection of people that you make yourself accountable to. It's the department colleagues that you would have at a regular job. But it also exists in your personal life. Weight Watchers is a great example. Besides offering recipes and eating programs, they provide in-person meetings. The company says that meeting attenders lost nearly 8 times more than those who tried to lose weight on their own. Why? The magic of accountability. Here's the plan for my client. We identified his contact people for 3 projects that currently have the most traction. We sketched out rough timelines for each project. In podcast 79, I talked about working backwards in order to figure out a timeline. You start with the end result. It's easier to see what had to happen right before that and right before that than it is to try to see the end point all the way from the beginning. Okay, once we had the timeline, we could see where my client might get hung up and start procrastinating. Those are the times to schedule a virtual team call. He could use the call to get more information from his team member, or he could use it as a deadline to complete a piece of the project and report on it. Having the calls on his calendar gave more structure to the timeline. The interesting thing is that your team members don't have to know that they're on your team. In some cases, that might be kind of awkward. For example, if you pick a client to be on your team. Although it makes sense to check in with your client, you really don't want to put the client in the position of receiving a report from you. One way that works in my business is that I'll announce that I'm going to do something, like provide a new service by a certain date. And that gets me motivated to finish the thing off so I can present it when I promised I would. I feel like somebody's expecting it, and that is inspiring to me. It also encourages me to put tasks on the calendar and complete them because I've given myself a reason that they should happen now, not next month or next year or sometime in the future. Another way it works for me is I have 2 friends who are also solo business owners that I talk to every week. We don't have a specific agenda for our calls, although that's a great idea. Still, the calls give some shape to my week, and I think about what I'm going to tell my team members in advance. So if I told Paula that I'd start writing copy for my new class, I really want to get that done before we talk. Not only so I can tell her how it went, but I also want to get her feedback on what I wrote. Another key feature of the virtual team technique is that it helps create urgency. The client I've been writing about is prone to putting things off till the last minute, and then he doesn't have time to do as good a job as he'd like to, say, with a report he needs to deliver at a meeting. Regular calls with a virtual team member create small urgencies that prompt him to complete small pieces of the project over time, rather than cramming an hour before the meeting. Urgency creates focus. The more you perceive urgency for a particular task, the more everything else drops out of the picture, so it's not distracting you anymore. It's also exciting. Now, too much urgency can cause panic and shutdown, but just the right amount gets you in the groove so you can do your best work. So here's what you can do now. Think about who you could recruit for your virtual team, whether they know it or not. Friends can work if they're in a similar situation to yours, so they have insights and experiences in common with you. Family members can work. People in your field that you meet through networking, or a mentor. Then start assembling your team. Hey, thanks for listening. I'm Claire Tompkins, the Clutter Coach. If you like the show, I'd love it if you leave a rating and review in iTunes. You can subscribe, too, so the podcast will be ready and waiting for you to listen to. You'll find the show notes on my blog at www.cluttercoach.net, and you can check out my store to find books I've written and a whole bunch of other stuff. If you're a fan of the show, you can become a patron on patreon.com for as little as $1 a month. You can find my page by going to the Patreon website, that's Patreon, and searching on Clutter Coach. I'll still post the podcast free of charge, but I've got some cool rewards for folks who want to help me make the show even better. Come back next week for a new podcast.